Hello, good morning. Welcome to day 4 of IBC. Day 4, can't believe it. Normally, in a normal IBC, we'd be halfway through, but we're actually at the end of the show now, the last day of the show. What a show it's been. It's been amazing. Every day, we've had some incredible sessions in the Accelerator program here on the innovation stage. The Accelerator program is represented over there by 8 amazing projects that have been working toward their proof of concepts here at IBC throughout this year. And we've got an array of projects that range from 2 5G projects to cloud projects and projects that are looking at things like volumetric video and extended realities and immersive audio. And today we're going to focus on a project that's been looking at the next generation news studio. So this is a lineup of incredible companies that are champions, ranging from the BBC and Reuters to Warner Brothers Discovery, of course, which owns CNN, and TV2 in Denmark, and Park Production. Household names, actually, in the news field. And Next Edition, DMB, which owns White Light, and Singular Live, the graphics company, all participants in this project, which is looking at how, not only how news is created or will be created in the future, but how consumers, and particularly young consumers of news, are absorbing their news. What are the platforms that they're using? How are they looking to digest their news in lots of different ways? So the Accelerator program is a framework for collaborative innovation. It was created by IBC for the buyers of technology, the broadcasters, the news agencies, for example. The buyers who come to IBC to buy their technology, they work together on challenges, whether they're business or technology challenges, but challenges that they want to try and solve or try and understand better. It's about learning by doing. It's about hands-on experimentation and trying out some new things. And then over the months before IBC, they come to an agreement on a proof of concept, something that they really want to try and prove. And that's what we're here to showcase today. So it's my great pleasure to introduce our panelists today, from the world of news. So first of all, can I welcome Antoine Stallenberg, who is the Global News, Technical Knowledge Operations Manager from Reuters. Welcome. You've got your bag with you. That's good. Take a seat anywhere. Thank you, Antoine. We have Adam Leahy, who is with Next Edition from Sweden, who is the Creative Director. Welcome, Adam.
Greetings.
Greetings. Good to see you. Can I welcome also the guy who's really been leading this project right from the start, and he's been involved in accelerators for the past 3 years and has been a fantastic champion of many of our projects, and that is Morten Brandstrup, who is the head of news technology with TV2.
Hi.
Hey, Morten. And then I'd like to welcome Crystal Richards, who is a broadcast IT engineer with CNN, Warner Brothers Discovery. Welcome, Crystal. And then we have, last but not least, off from the beach, actually, yesterday in Malaga. Literally, he was, and he's here for the day. It's a great pleasure to welcome Mike Ward, who is the marketing director for Singular Live. Mike, thanks for joining us. We would have had Morwen Williams, who's been part of the project. She's the head of news operations for the BBC, but of course, with the events, the sad events that have been happening in the UK, both Morwen, who is involved in the project, and also Richard Leachman, we should mention, who was involved in the project that works for Morwen on news operations with the BBC. Of course, all the BBC News staff have been grounded in the UK, so sadly couldn't join us. But they've been an integral part of this project. So guys, what have we been doing for the last few months on this project? Morten, maybe you could start by setting the scene in terms of what this is about. Is it about a news studio? Is it about a newsroom? What's the difference?
Yeah, well, we started out at least with the challenge should be what is the future of the news studio, and some of us are trying to look ahead and find out what will be the next studio. What does that mean? What should be in that studio? And we do have all this great technology that we can bring in play in the studio. So that was where we took off in the whole discussion, and it was also where I expected that we will have some finding. it did not really turn out to be the only discussion, actually. So the whole discussion turned around during the first couple of meetings, and we realized that we couldn't ask that question without discussion.
Yeah.
What content that we have to produce, and it was more important to try to be sure about what is the future of the news content and the way that our news is consumed.
So everything from the creation of news to how it's presented, to the technologies that you use in that presentation, to the way that it's distributed and the way it's consumed.
We had to take that journey because the studio is just a small piece of that, and probably not the key part of it, actually.
So actually, on the weekly project calls, it would start off with at least a 10, 15, 20, 30-minute debate about news and how it's being consumed more than anything by young people.
Yeah, and that took quite a while, actually, to take that whole journey and ensure that we have, that we find the right, both the wording, but the whole trying to describe the picture of where we are heading,
right,
news-wise.
So Crystal, Antoine, as champions with CNN and Reuters, what attracted you to getting involved in this project?
Well, for us,
go first, Antoine.
all right. We try to bring our news in a better way, in a faster way. And in this project, it allows us to demonstrate from our new technology to bring it better to the integrators, and it's really a part of the GraphQL technology to bring it faster on stage. Yes,
Crystal.
I think from our perspective, it's all about serving your audiences correctly. So as a younger person, I stand here representing the younger generation and how our consumption of news may differ from, the traditional linear TV, branching out into digital and web content, social media, and how the news organisations can really harness what they've got and present it in a way that suits an audience that they might not be reaching as effectively as they could.
Yeah. Okay. And so we had a ton of technologies that could have come into play here, ranging from, in fact, if you look at all the accelerators over there, whether they're 5G, whether they're cloud-based, whether they're immersive audio, all of the technologies that are sort of disrupting the media and entertainment technology sector could come into play in the way that you create news.
Definitely. This is all those technology that you will expect us to discuss and take into advances in the studio and potentially as a bring into play when having a studio.
Yeah.
But we also realize that it's a time now where we like to host news in the field, being on the story. I think all news operations have hosted part of the war or special operation or whatever in Ukraine, hosting it in Ukraine. And it just shows where we are heading with the hosting part of having a studio. We would actually like to stay on the scene, and all we need is a bi-directional connection and some of the cool stuff that another project is actually doing.
Yeah. So let's talk about Singular and Next Edition, because you came to get involved in this. Of course, you couldn't do news without graphics these days, right? It's absolutely a core kind of part of the visual experience of absorbing news, but also of delivering news. Tell us about your background, your pedigree in Singular.
Sure. So Singular is a cloud-based graphics platform, essentially, and we've been working with a very wide range of clients through sports and news. But projects like this were of particular interest because it is challenging the way that we produce content, and that's why we created Singular, because we recognize that people are creating content and distributing and consuming content in different ways. So working with partners like this who are also trying to figure out, well, how do we create content for these new markets and new people and new viewers. And that really gave us an opportunity to flex the sort of what can we do with Singular. Then you throw in partners like Next Edition, who just gung-ho, let's take it, let's mash it up, let's throw it against the wall, let's stamp on it a bit and see what we can make happen. And working with people like Crystal, who's got a very different perspective, because Morten's right. The technology has evolved so much over the last few years to allow us to do things in a completely different way, but the people creating the sort of productions are still thinking with the mindsets of, it has to be done like this.
It has to be done by a guy in a studio.
Absolutely.
With graphics that come on a screen and with the traditional ways of reporting.
And I need my MOS integration, and I need this, and blah, blah, blah. Everything that slows it all down. And that's what we wanted to try and break.
Yeah. So tell us about Next Edition, Adam.
So we started about 9 years ago, actually next year's our 10th anniversary, with microservices, and we were a systems integrator, and we got extremely frustrated with the way that everything's held together with fairy dust and string and crossed fingers. I hope it plays. So we built our own automation system, and we started there. Then we built a MAM, then we built an NRCS, then we built an ingest machine, and then we built most of the news workflow inside a single user interface. And that allows us to take out milliseconds here, 30 seconds here of the process of taking a story from ingest to pushing it out. And the difference there is that you're always the first notification on the phone for breaking news if you are 2 minutes faster than every other newsroom consistently. You'll always be the first notification on the phone. Now that's something that nobody really thinks about, but every other notification after that the user will ignore because they've already seen the story. So for breaking news, you need agility and you need speed, and you can only do that if you consolidate all of these different individual products into one consolidated, centralized solution.
Right, great. So let's move on to kind of, where did we kind of get to with this project? Looking at kind of, we've talked about what the question was. We've talked about, well, we haven't really talked about, let's talk about the work stream, and then ultimately, what does this proof of concept look like around this next-gen news studio, the thinking?
Yeah, as you can see, we took the way that we work is with a weekly call, so it's a 1 hour weekly call, and from trying to setting the scene, it was a lot about this discussing back and forth, and really spend quite a lot of time to figure out what was the content about and to sum up these things, and then finally get into a part where we could do some trial and actually produce some stuff. So it was about trying to show, and Adam will do that later here, show how we get fast on air with a story, with a more adaptive graphic and so on. We had a work stream where we were doing the studio, having an explainer studio. We'll get back to that part also, talking about the scripting and so on. So there was a couple of work streams in this.
So I think we've sort of talked about this, haven't we? Why it needs to evolve, because audiences are looking at things differently. And that comes to the nub of it. And I think halfway through the project, we got to...
Interesting news out this morning. TikTok is now the fastest growing news source for adults in the UK. The Guardian shared this article that breaks down this survey done. It also points to the fact that TikTok was the UK's fastest growing source of news from 2020 to 2022. And this should come as no surprise. TikTok and Instagram now both among the most popular ways that young teenagers are consuming news. Now, it's important to remember, if you are consuming news on platforms like TikTok or Instagram, it's important to follow legitimate news organizations and consume your news updates from there, or people who work for these news organizations, like actual journalists. If you're consuming it from a content creator, it could be confused with opinions or misinformation.
So that was a real TikTok story about how young people are consuming news on these platforms.
Yeah, and we have actually turned our focus, I think, as a couple of months before, but now we actually have the data. Yeah. We have been looking at Crystal quite a lot.
We have actually, Crystal, we have been looking at you, because you are the next generation, not only of the industry, technology kind of expertise, but also the future of news consumption. And tell us a little bit about what you were thinking, the sort of more radical thoughts, I guess, you were thinking that you brought to us in the beginning.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the discussion did come around, TikTok as the new current trend, and it clearly is important because Ofcom have written about it, and that kind of sets a precedence that it's not just, a few of us on a call thinking we should look to social media and particularly the new and upcoming channels, but actually there are statistics here and figures here that TikTok has brilliantly addressed. And I think it was easy for us to think it was a lot of celebrity news, not proper, important subjects that were being addressed. But this has shown, you can have serious news. I think we have a few clips after, looking at abortion laws and things like that. Serious news can be delivered through social media platforms, but like addressed in that video and in the Ofcom report, there is an element of trust that isn't there yet with all consumers, and it comes from, the classic, this is people's opinions, and the industry leaders are clearly not engaging with the audiences as much as some of these opinions, and that is swaying their perception of how they're engaging with news on social media. And whilst it's growing so rapidly, the level of trust hasn't kind of kept up with that. So as a news organisation, we really need to present ourselves very well on the platforms and have brand continuity and really hold ourselves to our high standards that we do everywhere else, but still match the speed of social media and be able to keep up with the pace of change.
Yeah, because trust is absolutely the critical word you said there, isn't it? It's reputationally, news organisations have to be absolutely, particularly the BBC and others, public broadcasters that are so kind of kept there, held to the sword, as it said, by the regulators. Yeah,
it's actually a really interesting point, because TikTok was obviously a big part of the conversation, but actually it was more about the fact that people are just looking at lots of different platforms now to get their content, and they'll look at things in different ways, and that's what Crystal really opened all of our eyes about. It's like, maybe I don't want to watch a video, maybe I've only got 30 seconds, maybe I want to read more. So it's actually not even just about TikTok, it's about how do you as news creators distribute that content in the right formats, to all the right different platforms. So you're engaging all those audiences and making sure that people who are getting their news on TikTok are getting it from CNN or TV2 or the BBC, and not
Reuters.
Jeff from the pub.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's
I like Jeff from the pub.
And it's also important, it's not about taking away anything we have, but adding content and adding value to the customer, rather than saying, we're not going to do linear TV, because obviously we need that. That is the bread and butter, and we need news articles.
And I think it's fair to say, isn't it, that Ofcom report also said that, of course, the parents are still going more than ever to traditional sources, but young people are.
Yeah, but it must be fair to say that you really question us about do I need a host and a studio anchor to actually guide me through the news?
Absolutely. So it was part of the conversation. You look at kind of people in the field and you go, well, I could be anywhere. I could be innovation stage at IBC. I could be anywhere talking about a story. As long as you're somewhere relevant to the story, it doesn't matter. Do you need a host, or do you need someone to guide you through kind of the background of the story, the content, an explainer to say, this is what's going on around you, and have a more contextual-based news story rather than the host-guided, have the consumer kind of find their way through the story themselves.
So there's different ways of getting that information across, whether it's a 30-second news piece, whether it's a 60-second news piece, whether it's a 10-minute feature. There's different ways of telling it, and different ways that you as producers should think about delivering it now.
Definitely, and to the audience, by questioning us this way, it really turned the whole conversation. So you were doing a really good job, Crystal, because it was opening our mind to that we needed another approach to the whole discussion. We could not only talk about technology and all the cool stuff, we had to talk about the storytelling. So it turned us much more into an editorial discussion than it was actually about the cool technology.
Yeah. We'll just move on. There was another story here, which was an example of a TikTok story. Actually, that was quite a serious one, which was which was the abortion story in the US, which just showed that it could be heavy news as well, that more serious news that could be explained. So let's move to the nub of this, because I think we need to now talk a little bit about where this project
integration
went to next in terms of, okay, we know that now. We've talked a lot about news creation, news consumption.
Yep.
What did we want to do as a proof of concept to take this to that sort of that level that we've been talking about?
Yeah, I think to try and explain it a bit more in context, I'll ask Matthew not to switch over to my laptop yet, because I might do a little demo in a second, but I'm going to stay on this. So what we're talking about is the interface to the story, okay? So we don't start with a solution and then work backwards to the viewer experience. We start with the viewer experience first, the device, okay? And devices are horizontal, they're vertical, they're different sizes, you know, they're different languages for subtitles, localization, personalization. So if we could take the next slide. What we're looking at here is that actually the front end getting in hasn't really changed very much. You've still got news wires, and you've still got people like Antoine at Reuters providing you with content and stuff, and you're ingesting it, and there you are, and you still need all of that stuff inside the galleries and inside the newsroom. You still need script writing, you need all of that, but it's that part there going out that's the hard part. That's the versioning of the story. So you've got your OTT, you've got Flow, you've got all of the different social platforms, podcasts, websites, and you need to be able to hit all of them with a breaking news story really fast. And the interesting thing about that is, if we move on to the next slide, please, instead of taking pictures of my mildly handsome face. Because of Crystal, I had a sleepless night, and I thought, right, I'm going to have a look at this properly. So I looked at the same story on all the platforms. And we just assume that there's a consistency there. There is no consistency at all. So the way TikTok shows something is different to the way Facebook does to Twitter, which have rounded corners on a square video. YouTube puts it at the top and doesn't even care which direction your phone is turned in. Like Blick is same pretty much as that. And you know, but it's like you need a new safe area. A safe area where all the logos are and all these social platforms, so you know not to put a graphic underneath them. But the fundamental problem is that we think that the interface is fixed and is sorted out, and it's not. So we have to sort this out. That's our responsibility. So the agility is in story versioning. What we have to do is version these stories. And the baby boomers want one version, Generation X want another version, the millennials want another one, etc., etc. So, and Gen Z, they just want the short version, you know, and get on with it. So you can't just take a story and deliver it to all platforms and walk away. That doesn't work, okay? Because you will find that certainly Gen Z over there, they just walk away, they're gone, they're history. So what I looked at was this. I found a project. It's nothing to do with Next Edition or me or anybody. It's actually online. It's called modularjournalism.com. It's a standard that seems to have been adopted by these companies here. The concept of this is that you break the story up into its DNA pieces. So, if you don't mind if I stand for a second.
Not at all, go for it.
So you have the summary of the story, you have the headline of the story. The headline of the story, that's the tweet. Huh? The lead of the story, the situation, the background of the story, the main event, the consequences of the story, the history of the story, the context of the story. What is the context of this story? The comments on the story, either from the journalists or from other people, a verbal reaction from ordinary people, and a conclusion, a reality check. Now, this is a lot more work for the journalists, so it's not going to be popular. But if you write the story in these different versions, then what you can do is this. You can take machine learning and start to understand what each one of these people likes, and then you can deliver a news story that's personalized. So you could say that here, the baby boomer, my dad, he always wants the main event and the situation now, and nothing else. He probably wants the long form, my dad, because he reads a lot. Whereas Gen Z over there, maybe they want the history because they don't understand anything about what's going on, and they want the summary because they want the short version, right? So we can glue together these pieces of the story and then deliver it, okay? And we can actually do that with video, and that's what we investigated with Andy at White Light, about how we write stories in a way that we can actually auto-version them on the fly. So you actually build into the script all of these things. And I guess we will talk about that in a bit. What's the next slide?
It's actually...
That's fine, we stay there. So reactive storytelling comes from an agile foundation. And to be agile, I need Antoine. Because first of all, I need content, right? Yeah. So if I can ask Matthew to please switch over to my laptop, and I will hand over to, I will do your slides, Antoine.
Do you need to click?
No, I will just use my laptop.
I will speak to.
Look at this. Thank you, Matthew. You're a star. Antoine.
Yeah, let's start. I'm from Reuters, working in a technical environment, and let's take the next slide. I start with a little history. A few decades ago, we started with NewsML and our REST API to collect this kind of information. It's still a solid platform to collect information, although every NewsML will contain 400 tags. So if you want to search to a large amount of content, it will take time, but also accuracy, what you want to look at. So therefore, we're searching for new technologies, and we are now going to the open source GraphQL to speed this up. So next slide,
That's
please.
the most riveting slide I think I've seen all.
I love JSON.
Well, at least it will give you something. So here, an overview what this new API will bring. To remember is that you could search through our whole database, where the NewsML REST operation is limiting your way of search. It will cost more time to go to the whole database, or you need to collect everything to your own environment. What is huge and what will ask a lot of investment. Where this new API will provide you in the cloud the connectivity to all our content, not only our content, but also partner sources who are on our platform. So around 100 what is written BBC, but also a lot of other sources available. So it's money, but it's also the efficiency of workflow, and Adam will show you in a moment what we mean with that part. We deliver to speed up to our customers and partners a very easy to use demo training part to see what we mean, what our translation is between our XML and how you can retrieve it. And from there, for a developer point of view, it is much more easy to adapt. So your developer need to know a little bit about news, but not everything, and we help with this interface to speed this up. So you will get the credentials, and then you can gather this information. Next one, please.
Right, and that comes back to me.
Yep.
So while all that XML stuff is kind of sexy if you're a developer, most of you, like Mark, just go flat-eyed. So the question is, what does that actually look like for a journalist? So as part of this project, if I flip back to here, this is Next Edition on my laptop, on the Wi-Fi, over a VPN. I'm connecting to the private cloud servers in Sweden, in Malmo. And what you can see here is Reuters Connect live inside of Next Edition. So in most scenarios, what would have to happen is that the user would have to open up another window, and they'd have to find what they wanted in Reuters Connect and download it and move the file, and that's slow. And as I said before, I want to be fast. So what we're doing next is that we just have virtual assets where we can look at the whole of Reuters and search the whole of Reuters, but from within the MAM inside Next Edition without leaving Next Edition at all. And I'm hoping the internet will hold up here. And what we do is we're streaming. This guy gets hit by a cat in a minute. Watch this. Here it goes. There we go. Nice. So it's streaming a proxy from Reuters servers inside Next Edition. But if I click the Harvest button, I will now pull down the high res for the newsroom to use. So what we're doing is the API in the background, and I have to say, Antoine, that the development team at Reuters and our development team were just stunning implementing this. Because now I've got this come in, I can go, okay, publish this to Facebook. Boom. Done. All in one interface. So the lightning speed, imagine what I said earlier about the first notification on the phone. It's already there. Well, somebody else is still trying to just get the clip off Reuters Connect and move it. We're using the API to smooth out that workflow and just pull it straight in so that everyone in the newsroom can use it. And also, something that's interesting, I have to put my glasses on, I'm getting old. Goodness me. So in our IBC Accelerator here, we actually also have, this is what we call a storyboard, and storyboards are just Kanban boards to us, actually, and you can set them up to do anything you like, in progress to do. Most of our workflows within the system run with these sort of customized Kanban boards. You'll forgive the speed of the internet, but you can see what's going on. This is using just an existing tool in Next Edition to look at the data in a slightly different way. So what we're looking at is the newsroom now can see everything in Reuters Connect live right now in its categories. General news, financial news, sport, health, right? Everything with a little lock that's unlocked, that's called NORC, right? Now, that means no...
Yeah, it is. Well, it is checked by usage, so there is no usage limitation on that article, and that's very important for journalists to use it straight away, and otherwise to check the rights, like famous people, if they need to pay or take attention of that usage. Is it used online or broadcast only? With this green thing, you're guaranteed can use it straight away, especially with third-party content. Yeah, it's important to know of the usage. Yeah.
Okay, so also the stuff that we did with the versioning with Andy at White Light, this is actually a rundown for a live studio. In fact, if I show you this, I am not joking. That's a studio in Sweden right now, live. And if I just pop back to here and I change over to my shot box a second, just to prove, just because it's fun, if I change a camera in the shot box, it'll change. If I change the video wall, I'm controlling a camera over Wi-Fi, a whole studio, controlling the whole thing from a laptop over Wi-Fi in front of all of you. Okay? So as you can see, that's a very automated system. And what we want to do with that is the versioning. So just to explain, what we did with Andy and White Light is and you'll see some videos in a minute, we made a 15-second version, a 30-second version, a 60-second version, what's that one? The 180-second version, okay? So, and then we just record them, one after the other, one after the other. And what happens is when you step out of one story into the next story, Next Edition slices it off the ingest and automatically clips it. So by the time you finish the rundown, you've already got it clipped, and then you can send it. So again, like really fast, really, really fast. And you'll see some of what we did there. We took Andy's feed from an SRT feed to Sweden, and we did that production. He was in Wimbledon, and we were in Sweden, in Malmö, and we did that whole thing totally remote from each other. And you will see that in a second. And just to finish off, because I realize I'm hogging so much time, let me find my, where's my Chrome? Okay. Here it is, go there. Okay, so this, if I start it up, this is just conceptual. So we use YouTube just as the way of moving it around. I hope it will start up. The internet's slowing down a bit. But the graphics that you see here are mics. And it's not coming from Next. It's actually embedded in the player in the browser. So if the video is playing, we're playing the channel straight out. That's an auto channel which is playing stuff directly from Reuters, which is content that's all you can eat coming in. But as I shift, you see the whole thing? Everything shifts, and the stream does not stop when I flip. And also, if you look at it in New York, the time will be right in New York because the graphic is being rendered over the top of the clean feed, right? So in a lot of ways, this is what Singular does and excels at, is that when we work together, we can create these responsive environments that we then render on device. And then rendering on device is personalization, localization, my mouth's not working. And that's a very powerful concept. So I think you can see that we kind of looked at so many different ranges of things in this. We never really came to a great conclusion.
That's amazing. And am I right in saying the BBC asked you to fix their ticker?
Yeah, Morwen said she had a terrible problem with the ticker here. So, and this is another thing we can do, is the agility of development. So she said that it's hard to get things into the ticker through an approval process. So I built her a storyboard exactly the same as you just saw, where she drags the RSS feed into a pipeline, and that's what feeds the Singular thing. And it didn't work off the shelf because we had to do some coding. But she said, oh, well, that's no good. And I said, well, come back in 2 hours. And in 2 hours, my development team fixed it. And it's that agility to be able to say, I want something, can I have it? And then have it, instead of having to wait for this software update or in a big queue or something like that. So also the agility of development in microservices environments and cloud environments like Mike and I live is also something that we learned was really special. Yeah.
So just a little problem the BBC had that this project fixed along the way, right? So
yeah, we fixed that along the way, yeah. And just so you know that also these news stories are also posted directly from Next Edition with the Reuters content onto the website as well. So it's the whole workflow is sitting right there in one website.
It's amazing, Adam.
Yeah, thank you.
Really astonishing.
Matthew, you can switch back.
So, incredible. Thank you very much. And so let's talk a little bit about, and you can actually kill the audio on this one, so don't worry. Talk us through this, if you could, Crystal, in terms of what White Light and what we're looking at with this Explainer Studio.
Yeah, so as we kind of alluded to earlier, the studio kind of almost took a back seat to the content and how consumers wanted that content. And we kind of said, the most intuitive thing at the moment is an Explainer Studio. So we have access to all this content, and what kind of news organisations can give to us is the explanation presentation rather than more of the same content. We want you to kind of dig a bit deeper into the story, and that kind of come for us in the many formats of, the 15 seconds, 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute formats, so that it kind of can serve all audiences, no matter kind of how much time they have and what depth of information they would like. So Andy here at White Light has done his demo in his really cool VR studio, and
he could be anywhere.
Yeah, he could be anywhere. So obviously VR is kind of popular, so that's the take we've got, and we make use of the facilities. They've got to make it a flexible environment, and I think that was a big factor as well, saying, we need to be flexible to how we present things, make it engaging and a little bit more interactive. So with the VR studio, interactivity is something that could be brought in the future to kind of bring the audience into the conversation rather than have them as just passively consuming.
Yeah.
And as you can see here, we have the clips in kind of a ranging duration so that it does meet what we talked about earlier. We can just put this out to social media. We don't need to write a complete new script. We don't need to make brand new content every time. We can work with what we have quite efficiently.
Do you see this versioning or this formatting? Do you see this as being sort of AI driven, that we need to automate it, or is it still very much a human process in creating these versions?
Yeah, I mean, AI is the dream, right? If it works, great, but it takes a lot of training, etc. So I think when we were looking at this, Andy's team did a great job of working with the script, because it all comes back to kind of that's what you're going to read out. And script writing at the moment, a lot of us thought was quite linear. We're writing one story, and the problem we had when, as Mike will know, trying to test that ourselves, we're not script writers, so we did struggle, is how do we write to fit all of these durations? It is quite difficult because you don't want to tell the whole story of a 3-minute piece in the first 30 seconds because your audience wouldn't stay, and you don't just want the summary. So we looked at kind of how you could intelligently break up the script and, do the camera cuts and stuff like that from what someone has written to produce this without, like we said, having to keep re-recording and taking up a lot of someone's manual effort. So yeah, I think AI and kind of intelligent system would work with that, but we did have to appreciate that the content makers and the script writers would have to change their way of working to kind of write the story as they were, and then be very selective about what bits are super important and must be in the 30 seconds, and then what is just additional detail and, like Adam said, background and context that people might want if they're really interested in that topic.
I think the other great thing about that, about the versioning of it, is that if we had more time, and there's so much more we'd like to do, but when you're operating in the cloud and when you're rendering content on the devices, it opens up so many more opportunities, because I'm sure your fantastic new Reuters API will offer language versions of the stories, right? And we're operating in the cloud. So let's take in, you do your main production, fine, it's in English, whatever, but then you can also render out multiple local versions in different languages with different sponsors, with different graphics. They can be interactive, so the viewer can choose what language they're seeing the graphics on. And all of this is all possible. We're doing this stuff now, but that's where some of this evolution comes in.
And actually also there's an interesting point about, this deal that Flow Television and Live is dead. Actually, the ability, as Mike says, to be able to ask a question over social and then have a response and ingest the response and react to the response, you could actually create this rabbit hole around a single tweet where you get more tweets about the answer to the first tweet. And so there's a lot of stuff even with fast that you could do with this sort of technology as well, not just news. So.
It's phenomenal. It really is phenomenal. So let's just, Crystal, again, could you just sum up what Andy was saying here, and I think Richard from the BBC in sort of summary, really, of where we've got to with this project?
Yeah, so I think it's fair to say we don't hold all the answers just yet, but I think it's all looking at how dynamic we can be and adding flexibility to the workflows and what we have already in place to stretch beyond kind of where we're reaching and the audiences we have. So, I mean, that's it in real brief. I don't want to take up everyone's time.
No, but I think importantly, you're absolutely right. This project didn't get to everything. But I think we really saw some clear signs here of some directional things that we need to go. How would you sum things up with this project? What would you say is the key takeaways from the project and all the learnings over the months?
Yeah, there was a short time where I thought, well, we will never get back to discuss the studio. But as you can see, we actually ended up with having the studio. So it's a long journey around the studio, ending up. I think the finding is that we, who is responsible for the technology in the studio and looking into what should be the next studio, we have to go back and talk to our editorial colleague and raise the discussion, what is the content that we need to produce in the future. That's a cornerstone in all this. And this is actually what Richard from BBC is also, his takeaway on this, that he had to go back now with the project and ask new question around what is the future for the content, not for the studio. And and some of the learning have been, at least, also that we might have to this multi-purpose news studio is my old-fashioned. We might need smaller studio, a smaller part of the studio. The VR explainer studio, as one example, we know that we will probably host more, to do hosting more in the field. So that part of the studio might also be taken out of the leading. So yeah.
So it's been worthwhile a few months. You've really got some tangible takeaways here.
I'm really going to miss everybody. It's a bit annoying.
Well, that's been great. Thank you so much. Thank you very much,
you.
Antoine. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Morten. Thank you, Crystal. Thank you, Mike.